Afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us today on August 2nd for the BSA's first Shop Talk. Today you have on the line me, Nigel Jacob, and my special guest star.
Jenny Efron's understudy. Jenny's not with us. She's with us on the line, but not presenting today. I'm Ben Peterson, and alongside Jenny, I'm the co-director of the Architectural Futures Group. Thanks for joining.
Today, the idea, as you might have seen, as we've communicated in the past, the Shop Talks will be a series that starts today that works to give you all, our members and friends and family, a closer look at what's happening inside the BSA. There's been sort of programmatic evolution over the past year or so, and we want to make ourselves open to you in terms of understanding what we're doing and give you a chance to take a look at it, ask questions, and poke around. So today, the first one, next slide. Oh, there's some, I'll leave that to all of you. There's some housekeeping. We will be recording the session. Next. Here's what we'll be covering, but in general, the hope is that we'll get you caught up to recent changes on the programming side at the BSA, talk about how we have come to where we are, and a little bit about our process, just for the sake of awareness, not that you absolutely need to know. And then we'll also be sort of giving you a snapshot of the work that is moving forward, and finally end with a Q&A where you can feel free to ask us whatever questions make sense to you. With that, next, go ahead, Ben.
Great. I'm going to give a very brief overview of the process that brought us to where we are today in August of 2023. A little over a year ago, like many institutions, we were grappling at the BSA with how we take advantage of our positioning and really start to address the work that we do as something more intentionally focused on issues of equity and climate and built environment. And we asked ourselves as an organization and reflected on this, how can we start to think about how we move our work from being siloed, program-driven type of organization and move more towards an organization really fundamentally about impact and fundamentally about community-oriented impact. We did all this reflection and thinking about how we can maintain members, partners, and community groups at the core of our work, but start to really hone in on the kind of work we do that might have more meaningful impact in the realms of climate and equity. So in reflecting on these questions, we embarked on our own BSA-centered revisioning and revisiting of what our mission and vision is and might become. And we sent out an RFP for a consultant to help us move through this strategic process of transforming the organization to become more impact-driven. The design consultancy firm, our partners here based in Cambridge, IDEO, was selected as a lead consultant to help us move through this process. And over the course of 10 weeks, we engaged with many of you who might be on the call. We engaged with BSA members, past, present, and future, our existing, current, and hopeful partners in the community realms, institutional realms, and other affiliated disciplines. And over the course of that duration of work with IDEO, we arrived at what was launched as our first request for innovations. In March of this year, we selected 5 prototypes, 5 initiatives to move forward as projects and partners who we felt really reflected our ambitions to move towards this more impact-driven work in climate and social equity. And we've been continuing to work with these 5 prototype teams throughout this past spring, summer, and into the fall. We'll talk more about this, but as we move towards the future and looking ahead, we're hoping that more BSA members will become actively engaged in this work, and we acknowledge that catalyzing this network is really essential to making sure these projects have legs, sustainability, and genuine impact. From the IDEO research, again, opportunities for stakeholder engagement, both from the populations of members that we serve and work with, and also more broadly with the communities and publics we hope to serve and work with. IDEO was able to pull out some really key narratives from these groups, from these stakeholder groups, and uncovered really important insight that helped us determine what our most effective next steps might be in generating income, generating opportunities to transform our work to be more impact oriented. Some quotes on the right, really thinking about the generational shifts in how we're approaching the discipline and profession of architecture, thinking about the BSA's role as a convener, but hoping that the impact of events might last a bit longer than a day or an hour. And also acknowledging that to make space for doing architecture differently and addressing these issues of climate inequity in the built environment, we really need to have more meaningful relationships built beyond the field of architecture and the profession of architecture. Some key takeaways from this work really help to inform not only our RFI, but continue to inform how we work alongside our project partners and how we continue to think through what it means for the BSA to evolve to become more impact oriented. Core to this work is really the strength of the BSA membership, an acknowledgement of the expertise, knowledge, and insight that each of you holds as profession, and acknowledging that central to our work is architecture. Hoping also to acknowledge that in the past, where the BSA might have been seen as an organization that was a mile wide in the breadth of things it tried to do, we're hoping to refocus this work and become a bit more intentionally deep with the kind of relationships we build and focus with the kind of projects we take on, all so that they are moving towards tangible, describable impact. We also acknowledge that in order to do this as a trusted partner, the way we work within and alongside communities should really be a point of reflection for us in thinking through how we make space for lived experience as expertise and how we make space for multiple voices to participate in this transformation. And finally, acknowledging the opportunities that the institution has to address kind of historical legacies of inequity, both inside and outside of the BSA. The institutional platform for influence really presents an opportunity to spread this work beyond our membership and into the public realm more broadly. Nigel.
So with this framing question, how can we do architecture differently? We, in collaborating with our partners at IDEO, we built out a series of decision criteria that would guide us in thinking about which projects that we would ultimately select. And then we also were able to assemble from our board as an advising committee to help us look at the projects that we would ultimately that would be submitted and compare them to the decision criteria so that we would come up with a set of projects that were oriented around the values of the BSA. Early on, at the end of last year, we published our request for innovations, which was an open call to the community. It was essentially targeting architects, or it was oriented to sort of architects and adjacent, but we didn't turn people away simply because they weren't architects. So we published the call broadly. We got several dozen responses that were a fascinating range of difference in terms of institutions and the problems and opportunities that these different each of the teams were looking at addressing. They submitted those to us at the beginning of the year, and we, along with our selection committee, were able to cull through the different submissions using the decision framework as a decision matrix, and understanding in determining which projects we should move on and which we should say no thank you to. Through that process, we were ultimately able to end up with 7 semifinalists. And at that point, the idea was that we were going to end up with one or two possibly. But as we went through the projects, as we'll see in a second, we made the strategic decision that it made more sense to look to take a slightly larger number of projects so that we can work on them and with them and provide more of a self-referential network of impact in terms of the sort of work that we were doing. So we did, just to backtrack a bit, we held an open house in the earlier this year with the seven semifinalists here at our BSA space, and people got to kick the tires a bit and understand what it is that we're working at in many cases. And people were able to, in that moment, able to sign up for projects, and we had a lot of activity. It was a great evening. And then we made that decision to end up with, sorry, did I make you jump around back and forth?
No, it's okay, I can go forward.
Okay, next. And so these are the final five. And as these are very different organizations, so they range from professional architects to community advocates and artists. And I'll say a word about each of them, but I think the way to look at these projects is, rather than scrutinizing these projects from the perspective of the impact of any one project, I think it makes more sense to look at them in terms of systemic impact, that we're taking these five different dimensions essentially in how we look at changing the way that architecture happens in our city. So the first project, centering on, whoops.
See you in the future.
Yeah, I lost the thing. So here, so See in the Future is a collaboration of an artist collective essentially, and they're looking at targeting an area in our city, the Mass and Cass region of the South End, and looking at the pernicious dynamic of homelessness and drug addiction, and looking at how we can take a different approach in telling the stories that are being about what is happening there and how people are creating community in that moment. See, reimagining community. That's interesting. So I don't use this language when I describe the project.
Families for Justice.
I like this. So Families for Justice and Healing. So this is a nonprofit that is composed of women who have been affected in various ways by incarceration. And the intent is to take a different approach in how we look at the impacts of the carceral system in community, and how can we develop sort of design patterns or guidelines that can be used to change people's lives in that context. Jumpstarting circularity. The notion of a circular economy is an idea. It's not new, certainly, and it is an idea that at least I have seen more commonly used in Western Europe, and it is an idea is thinking about reduce, reuse, recycle to the building process. So that we're looking at how buildings are constructed and how they're decommissioned and what happens to the flow of materials through that network.
Social equity framework.
Social equity framework. So this is another interesting collaboration across architecture and community activism that is looking at how we take a broader view in assessing the development in community. So rather than simply looking at the physical and or financial characteristics of projects, we're looking at the social impact they will have, or they're purport to have. And this last project,
pass the parcel.
Pass the parcel is complementary in that it is looking at how we think more broadly about the impact of buildings in community, and how we're not sort of simply looking at the boundaries of a development project in terms of its effect on the community, but understanding it in a systemic way or a systematic way, how any particular project changes the life of the community. This QR code will take you, if you click on that, it'll take you to a beautifully laid out booklet that will tell you more about these projects. Next.
So each of these projects, as Nigel mentioned, it's important that we think about them as a comprehensive portfolio and that each complements one another. We're able to provide opportunities for the project teams, not only to share resources, but also to think about how their collective impact really elevates the work to another level. And also the project composition, those 5 projects as a portfolio, tells a really impressive and I think exciting narrative about the kind of work the BSA hopes to do and the organization it wants to be. And that each is really about centering community at the heart of our work. It's about understanding the capacity and opportunities that design has for designing more resilient and equitable futures. And also thinking through the demonstration of this work as prototype, being able to make headway in the transformation, not only of practice, but also policy. So we've been thinking about not only how this narrative informs us about our work, but also requires us to reflect continually on our own purpose and our own mission, and that all of the decisions we make are really in the service of improving the quality of life for Boston area residents. And we do this by activating our really unique and diverse network of architects, designers, and allied professionals in the region. And with the aim of championing innovation in the built environment as a way of addressing and getting to this North Star. We focus this strategy on the issues of climate and equity because we see that as the most important place for those of us who are working in the built environment to direct our efforts and energies in order to demonstrate some lasting impact and transformative change. This focus helps us make the strategic decisions, about the kind of new work we might take on and the kind of existing work we might continue to support. This diverse collection of work, this prototypes as a portfolio, again, tells a story of us participating in multiple different ways in the service of activating this mission. We also hope that by supporting this work, collaborating not only with our members alongside of these community teams, will demonstrate that the work's outcomes and learnings are the seedbeds for fostering more meaningful collaborations, both with local and regional partner organizations, and also with the broader AIA community beyond Boston. We do this all, and it's all made possible by our most important in some ways or most intimate partners here, and that's the BSA membership of designers. And that if we're able to activate this mission in the way that we anticipate, will make each other stronger in the work that we do, simultaneously being able to demonstrate how architecture might be done differently in the service of achieving more just and equitable futures, and then also demonstrating the relevance and impact that architecture has as a catalyst for change. So I think that's where we are in our first Shoptalk overview. I think, do we want to open it up for questions now? For thoughts?
Yeah, that sounds good.
All right, cool.
Should we just let people come off of mute and ask the questions? What did we agree to last time?
Yeah, Madeline just put it in the chat. If anyone has thoughts, questions, or
Cool.
comments, feel free to unmute. This can be as informal as Zoom allows us to be.
One comment I'll make is that, could you go back one slide, Ben?
Yep.
So one of the fascinating dynamics here is that although we're framing this work, the work that we're doing with these prototype projects as new work, it's it's really, this is work that the BSA has been doing for decades in so many ways. You know, the work that we've done in collaboration with our members and how we bring design and architecture to take on a whole range of issues. And so it's only new in that we're talking about it in a new way, but we've always done this work. So that's been interesting for me as a, I haven't been here very long, but it's been useful to get a sense of that.
Yes, I just add, when we think about the core member services and programs that the BSA has always facilitated and supported, whether it's continuing education, convening around particular topics or events or knowledge communities, I think this work allows us to see how those things can be strengthened with a renewed focus on impact in the realms of equity and climate. And I'll say that very briefly, the 5 prototype projects each have built into their scopes of work opportunities for learning, for knowledge exchange, for providing entry points for any one of you on this call and any of the BSA members to become real thoughtful participants in supporting how this work happens.
Any reflections? Anyone? Questions? We won't entertain anything. Just about. One of the interesting ways or sort of frameworks of viewing the projects themselves is how each of them want to engage with architecture in different ways. So on the one hand, we have a project that is looking at, I mean, it's sort of like at the beginning, middle, and end of projects in the sense. They're looking at how we select projects to be built in general within cities, and then looking at how they get designed in terms of how they are designed in collaboration with community and sort of the dynamic of dialogue between architects and community members, and then all the way towards the end in terms of thinking about how are we decommissioning or deconstructing buildings. So it's been an interesting sort of kind of continuum of projects.
I'd be curious if I'm allowed to ask questions of the group, of the audience. How many of you are here today that had some familiarity with this kind of strategic transitioning of the organization? How many of you may have been engaged in the work? And would just love to hear some reflection on whether or not this is old news, new news, or somewhere in between.
Well, I'll just say, I'm Michael Waring, by the way, sorry, introduce myself. I just wanted to say it's very interesting. I was not familiar with it, mostly because I only relocated to the Boston area about a year ago. So it's very informative and definitely an interesting process.
Welcome back. I'm gonna stop my screen share so we can have a conversation actually looking at you. It's better. And that's by no means an instruction to turn your cameras on, but if you want to, you're welcome.
This is Daniel Steger. I'm co-chair of the Residential Design Committee. How does this dovetail with the Design Awards programs, if at all?
It's a great question. Nigel and or Jenny feel like fielding that one?
I think the The answer is that's in development. I think there in this moment we're also rethinking the way that the awards, the design awards, the way that that process is happening as well. And so connecting the dots between this effort and that effort, I think we're still trying to figure that out in terms of the best way to leverage both the opportunity of, you know, this is sort of like the front end and, you know, the design awards on the back end, but we're trying to converge them. But we'd love your thoughts on that as well.
I don't think we have any thoughts yet, other than I think there's a desire to keep us in the loop, because we seem to be finding out about these revisions and new directions kind of after the fact. And so as with moving any large organization, there's a lot of moving parts and pieces, but that's been a little bit of a frustrating topic within the RDC about how things are changing and moving, and as knowledge pairs being kept up to speed with what we can communicate to our membership.
And that's fair. That's really fair. And so as we think about evolving the work that we do at the BSA, ensuring that we have better channels of communication with our members is part of what we're trying to do. And so that's very welcome feedback. Thank you. Other questions or comments?
I just add something to Daniel's comment question, in that while we're envisioning these 5 prototypes as being opportunities to engage directly on project work that has the potential to support the anticipated scopes and agendas of each of the project teams, internally, as this team is moving ahead in supporting each of these prototypes, we're also reflecting on the learnings that might emerge from our own processes and protocols, being places where we can think about how we reinvent some of the things, refine some of the things, or strengthen some of the things that the organization has already done. So thinking about how these projects and prototypes demonstrate impact in the realms of climate and equity in the built environment might have implications for the way that we celebrate or award, recognize the work of our member firms and other architects who have been doing this work all along, who will continue to do this work. And thinking about what that means formally, I think, is a bigger question that some folks on our staff are tackling now. But being able to demonstrate that there is opportunity in transforming what we mean when we celebrate excellence in the design professions.
I don't mean to monopolize this conversation. Sorry.
No problem.
Yeah, I'm wondering, because it's such a paradigm shift and a different way of thinking, which I'm on board with, I'm wondering if at the knowledge committee level, there could be some sort of, and I'm going to use, you can't see it, but air quotes, some sort of training or help in getting us to shift, because, you know, the way we're, let's say, encouraged to think about bringing content to our membership, it's always typically around original content and events, versus the paradigm shift that you're asking or we're looking at. And so I think it'd be interesting to get a number of knowledge chairs with membership together that can start to brainstorm about how we think about what kind and how we deliver content to our knowledge committees. That could be an interesting activity.
Would love that.
It's a great idea.
Yes. And many of these projects have embedded in their work plans explicitly the desire to work with knowledge communities as partners and thought leaders and co-designers that might happen. And along those lines, in the less than a week or within the next week, each of you will be receiving a more specific call to action that emphasizes the very intentional and specific ways that members might engage in each one of these projects, everything from training and workshop development to participating in kind of hands-on building and learning about this work. But yeah, I think knowledge communities are and have always been a tremendously valuable asset to the BSA community, and that we can think about how we build those entry points into this work in a more transparent and accessible way.
Thank you.
Sure.
Ben and Nigel, could you talk a little bit more about timeline?
Sure, Nigel, I'd let you take that one. I was going to ask if you wanted to also describe how this is really a building year for this work in architectural futures.
Good call. So the overall timeline, as Ben said, the IDEO process lasted most of last year, and this year, I think, as we've been seeing it, that design process that we went through last year set us up to do implementation and delivery later in the year, and so that's really what we're in the middle of doing. This year is about building what we designed, and so the projects have started. They started in mid-April. And they have different timelines, but they're all the overall goal was to have them be between 8 and 16 months in duration. And so they've begun now, and they're sort of going at different velocities depending on their needs and resources and the availability of partners and so on. So they will be sort of delivering at these different time horizons, but along the way, in addition to any work products that each of the projects are spinning up or pushing out, there'll be, as Ben said, sort of workshops. Again, they'll be a little bit staggered because the work is happening at different speeds, but we'll be sure to make people aware of when each new workshop or moment of engagement is going to be available, and we'll share that with everybody. So the work has started now, and then it'll be through the end of the year into next.
And I'd just say also that a tremendous amount of our work as staff here at the BSA and as part of building this architectural futures group as an entity that really foregrounds trust and relationship making. We've been spending a lot of time with some of the project teams who are brand new to the BSA, and in many cases brand new to the field and profession of architecture. And we did this intentionally so as to demonstrate the possibilities for our models of innovation not being exclusively about delivering the most novel or new product or thing, but being able to say that the BSA is transforming in innovative ways by building relationships with new stakeholders, and also by developing new processes of partnership alongside existing stakeholders. So for many of the projects, we spent a ton of time just building a shared language, building shared understanding of roles, responsibilities in very real ways, building a knowledge base about what each of the project teams does and therefore what the BSA does as an institution. So I'll say that very specifically one project that in partnership with Families for Justice That's Healing, they've really taken the lead, as they should, given their own expertise on thinking through the development of, I hate saying curriculum because it sounds too schooly, but a series of intentionally cumulative workshops that we're hoping to launch in late fall, and building out opportunities for a cohort who might be interested in exploring what abolition means in the built environment. And that stuff, again, the content and the logistics of all of that is still in development, but we're aiming to have at least a call for participants out by fall.
The other thing, other line of activity that's happening here is that each of these projects has different resource needs, and in terms of people and materials and time and finances and so on. So the other thing that we're doing is trying to line those up, again, given that they need different kinds of resources at different times. So that's the other one.
We also love, obviously, this is the first of what will be a series of several shop talks, but I hope very genuinely that this is the first of many conversations we might have with each of you about how the work is going and how you want to be involved, and how this work might be, how you might engage in this work in ways that are beneficial to you both professionally and personally. And thinking about what that means, we'd love to, this to be an open dialogue between everyone. Thanks, Daniel, for joining. And part of that work is going to be determining what makes most sense in terms of how this dialogue happens, how we maintain conversation, both in terms of being able to update you in a way that feels timely and genuine, and then also being able to make those communication channels work in two ways so that we're responsive and engaged in dialogue with each of you about how the BSA is fulfilling its mission with architects and designers at its core. Angela, do you want to give some insights or thoughts about what's next, and maybe if there are any questions or comments about what might be next for crowdsourced shop talk ideas as well?
Yeah, I think that as we move forward in terms of trying to find ways to better communicate with members, I think we would love to, like, this idea of doing something similar with knowledge community chairs is a great idea. I think we would definitely love to so we'll be putting out a call to all of you at some point in the near future, with opening this ourselves up to requests for things that you all want to know, and about the work that we're doing, or others, just to go into more detail about some of these projects. But some of them are are pretty interesting. So we will certainly be reaching back out to all of you to solicit ideas that you may have. And they may ultimately, maybe they're ideas for Shoptalks, or maybe they might end up in other programming otherwise that the BSA is doing. So we want to be as open and porous as possible as we can to all of you. One set of ideas that we'll be trying out in the very near future is we will be visiting firms, some number of the team and some number of us, the BSA staff, and some of the members of the project teams, our prototype teams, and we'll be coming to firms, to various member firms, large and small, to both talk about the work and like what we're doing and why we're doing it, but also how all of you can be engaged in the work in more direct ways. Because one of the things that we're getting a sense of is each of the firms wants to engage a little bit differently, and obviously each of them have different kinds of resources that they would like to be able to pull into some of the work in a collaborative way. And so we're going to be starting those in September, where we're going to be visiting, doing these firm visits. And so if you would like us to come and do, I think that we're not going to be able to do every single firm that we're associated with. There's quite a few, but certainly if you would like us to come by, please do let us know, and we will I think we're trying to not make them generic, we show up and just do a bunch of talking heads, but rather we want to be able to make these collaborative workshops where they're actually valuable for all of you, as well as to the project teams as much as possible, so that you get something out of it in terms of understanding how your work can influence or be influenced by the topics that the prototypes are focused on.
Well, I recognize that many folks are hopping off. I just want to say thanks for spending what is likely a lunch break with us on this Zoom call. If there are any other thoughts or questions, feel free to put them in the chat or unmute now. But otherwise, we'd love to have you all again and continue conversation with us as the work moves forward. We'll be sending out an email to all of you, and folks who registered may not have been able to attend this conversation today, with opportunities for engaging more directly with the work, and again, an overview of where we are and where we hope to be. In the meantime, I'll put this in the chat, but if there are thoughts or questions that didn't get addressed or answered today, you're always welcome at any point to email us at innovations@architects.org, and I'm going to put that in the chat for all of you, and that will go directly to all of us on the team here. Nigel, myself, Jenny, Maya, Madeline, and other folks who are not here or maybe here. But yeah, we hope that will be a channel to at least start a conversation that we hope to continue as work continues on. Nigel, any other thoughts?
Nicely said. Thanks, y'all.
Thanks everyone for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon.